Okay, and I think Megan, we're being live streamed now on YouTube. 1 second, okay. Judge, I think we're good as soon as the YouTube feed starts.
I calculated it the other day for one of my hearings. It's a 22-second delay.
Good to know.
I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, it is, because I thought we were off the record at one point and said something and we were still on YouTube. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but I calculated it from then on.
Okay, well, that's been 22 seconds, so we're live now. I will call the meeting to order. Megan, who's going to call the roll?
That'd be me.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. The Honorable Sharon Keller,
Here.
Mr. Alex Bunnan,
Here.
the Honorable Valerie Covey, the Honorable Brandon Creighton, the Honorable Richard Evans, Mr. Gonzalo Rios,
Here.
the Honorable Nathan Heck, the Honorable Missy Maderi,
Here.
the Honorable Nicole Collier,
Here.
the Honorable Reggie Smith, the Honorable Sherry Raddick,
Here.
the Honorable Vivian Torres,
Here.
the Honorable John Whitmire.
Mike Ward for Senator Whitmire.
Judge, we have quorum.
Thank you, Megan. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from December 3rd, 2021?
There's one correction in the roll call in the minutes. I don't appear, but I know I was there and I made motions and such. So I couldn't find myself on there in the roll call.
Okay, can we make that change? And then is there a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. I think next is my report. The only thing I want to report is actually to thank the Grants and Reporting Committee for our meeting earlier this month, maybe last month, and the staff for all the work that they did on the grants, because we had some very good discussions and we're bringing a lot of things to you as a result of that meeting. And I will pass on to Jeff for Jeff's report now.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everyone. I'll try to be pretty brief. We have a couple new staff. We've been very lucky, and actually, especially in these times, very selective about who we bring on board, but happy to bring on Kristen Meeks. She's a new TIDC policy analyst. Kristen is a recent graduate of SMU Law School. She had a fellowship with SMU's Deason Center for Criminal Justice prior to coming to TIDC. We're also bringing on Linda Gonzalez as a senior policy analyst. Linda's a former prosecutor and a former defense attorney, and she's going to be focusing on Operation Lone Star for us. We're keeping very busy with Operation Lone Star, which brings me to the next item. OLS is ongoing. We're still looking at about 12 arrests per day on average. Most of those are going through the centralized magistration facility that's in Valverde County in Del Rio. In addition to that, though, there's a second centralized magistration facility that's opened up. The new facility is in Jim Hogg County, that's Hebronville. That's one county in from the border. With the addition of that facility, we're hearing from DPS and TDM and others that the number of arrests is expected to go up, that we might be looking, instead of 12 arrests on average per day, it might be closer to 30 to 40. So we're working on staffing up for that. We're still using a combination of public defender offices and private assigned counsel. Last count, we had about 11 full-time public defenders and about 40 private attorneys working on Operation Lone Star. So we'll keep you posted on that. If you're interested in the number of persons booked, magistrated, and transported to TDCJ facilities, you'll find that on, it's actually an unnumbered page because there's a late kind of addition to the meeting book, but it's right after page 7 of the meeting book. It's page 11 of the PDF. Basically, what we've seen so far since July is about 3,200 persons booked, about 2,800 persons magistrated, and just shy of 3,000 persons transported to TDCJ as part of Operation Lone Star. Moving on, the legislative update, just briefly, the legislative session will start in January 2023. I know that sounds like a long way away, but it's not. So we're already starting to think and prep for that. And at some point, we may be asking you all about doing a virtual strategic planning to think about next legislative session, probably sometime late in the spring. So we'll keep you posted on that. Wanted to note, if you look at item 4 on page 7, there's a TAC rule, and we just, I was talking to Judge Keller about this, and we just want to make sure that board members are aware of this. After TIDC awards grant money to counties, sometimes they come back to us with grant modification requests. We've tried to, and this is just following this TAC rule that you see in front of you, we've tried really not to bother the board if it's a kind of a minor request. So if there's no change in scope of the program, and if the dollar amount is very low, $1,000 or $2,000, we tend not to bring that to the board's attention. And we approve that on the staff side. If there's a scope change, or if there's a larger dollar amount involved, we bring that to the board's attention. And sometimes it requires a board vote. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that rule. Finally, a policy monitoring update. We have 2 counties, Maverick and Zavala counties. These are our longest outstanding policy monitoring efforts. We conducted initial policy monitoring visits in Maverick and Zavala counties back 13 years ago, actually. So they've been kind of lingering much, much longer than our other counties. We have done multiple follow-up visits with those counties. We've not really seen a lot of progress, much less so than we see with most counties. So I wanted to make the board aware that we're going to bring that up at the next Policies and Standards Committee meeting to discuss whether the board might, or the committee, and eventually maybe the board might want to take action as far as withholding funds from those counties, or take some other action. I think that's the end of my report. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Jeff, maybe I was supposed to talk about this, and maybe we don't need to, but you and I had talking at the beginning of the meeting about why the Grants and Reporting Committee did not
Yes.
vote on some of these, and you put something in the notebook, so I'm not sure we need to, but do you think that's a good idea?
We can, yeah, Edwin, I don't know if you want to, or if you want, I wasn't sure, Judge, if you want to talk about that now or later on. We can talk about it now too.
We do have an agenda item, Judge, that is a report from the committee summarizing the discussions there. And I think our plan was to just kind of give folks a sense of what action was taken, what was not taken, and why.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. All right, then next is the improvement team report.
Thank you, Judge Keller. Good morning, everybody. I just want to give you all a quick update on a few of the things the improvement team has been up to in the last quarter. If you turn to page 8 and 9 of your board book, that's where you will find our report. Regarding, I just wanted to highlight some things in our technical assistance. We've been providing technical assistance to a number of counties and public defender offices on their operations. In particular, there's a new thing I wanted to bring to your attention. We've been doing some technical assistance in a new area on automation, and we've been helping a few counties and public defender offices in that regard. One of our newer staffers, Nicholas Sawyer, has been helped out the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office and the 394th District Court on automating their appointment processes, and he's successfully brought down their appointments from days to minutes, literally. And you will see once we get to the section on grants, there is a grant application that's been submitted regarding those operations and helping pay for some of the technology to improve their automation, which has done a great job in terms of reducing burdens on staff and improving the appointment process. On our investigator project, we have, as you may recall, we got a federal grant to work with the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and other folks on examining the use of investigators by Indigent Defense Counsel in Texas. And since we last met, a survey went out to investigators in the state. I believe there are a couple of hundred responses to that from investigators, and we just put out a survey to criminal defense lawyers around the state on their use of investigators. and we're already over a couple hundred responses to that. We're looking for about 400 overall. And so that project, I think, is going well. I wanted to turn things over to Kathleen to talk a bit about the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program and the Juvenile Training Immersion Program.
Thank you, Scott, or excuse me, Jeff, I saw you unmute, so I just wanted to pause in case you wanted to jump in there.
No, I'm okay. Kathleen, I knew you had to step away for a minute. I just wanted to make sure you're here. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. So for a brief update on two of our exciting projects that are partnerships with the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, the Future Indigent Leaders Program, we have now selected a third class. We're calling it FIDL 3.0, and they're set to be trained next month in San Antonio. So we are successfully bringing this program to Texas. And the third class is an excellent group of young lawyers from across the state of Texas, both public defenders and people in private practice. The dates of that training are April 23rd through May 7th. And with the Juvenile Training Immersion Program, which is a partnership with TCDLA as well as the GALT Center to bring their nationally recognized training here, we've now completed all of our regional programs, and we have just one more virtual training that will take place next month online, and that is going to take place on April 29th.
That is exciting. Thank you.
And that's it for the improvement team.
Are we ready for Child Protective Case Representation Report?
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all again. Thanks for having me. I'm going to give you a short update on what's been going on in the child protection part of TIDC. We're still working on getting judicial plans in. When I wrote this report, we had 225 counties that had completed the approval process. We're actually up to 233, which is good. Hopefully we'll get to 254. I've been reaching out to different judges and counties hoping to get more plans in, and I'm hoping that number to go up soon. One of the data points that I wanted to highlight for y'all is just capacity numbers. So on this graph here on the PDF, you can see the breakdown of numbers of attorneys on appointment lists. And we've got, of the counties I've reported, we have 108 counties that are reporting 9 or less attorneys on their list. And that can create a bit of an issue for some CPS cases, particularly when you have multiple lawyers on a case. So certainly an area for improvement, things to think of as we think about the future for this work. And then on the financial section of the report, we've had 233 counties have reported expenditures, 224 have reported appointments, and the total amount that has come in is $64,655,399.93. And I think that's going to be the total that we've seen for FY21. To give you another little highlight of that data, we've got 110 counties that report spending less than $1,000 on legal representation per child in DFPS custody in fiscal year 2021. I got to that number by DFPS has reported their numbers for FY21. So I basically just compared the amount spent by a county with the number of children in their legal custody for that year and just did kind of a division. And I went ahead for comparison purposes. One of the issues in our state is disparity in spending. And so this first table is the top 10 counties spending, and you can see just the whole dollar amount that they spent in FY21, the amount spent per child in their legal custody, and then the per capita spending. So the amount that they spend per, citizen in their county. And you can see even in the top 10, there's a pretty wide range of what's going on. But then when you compare to the lowest 10 counties in spending, there's a huge swing. And again, you can see how much is spent, total per year, per child, and per capita. So definitely some room to work there. There's some major disparities going on in our state and the county, and probably with this spending, some significant discrepancies in representation, depending on where you're going to find these lawyers and these kids. And then just looking to the future, we are currently analyzing all of the data. We have lots of really great, wonderful data points, lots of things to share. We have a goal to get a publication out this spring that will report all of the information that we've learned. And we'll also be presenting at the presiding judges retreat later this month, and also at the Civil Justice Committee of the Texas Judicial Council, which is also later this month. And then to give you a bit of a preview for the report that's going to be coming in for FY22. So for FY21, we asked some pretty basic information, just total expenditure amounts separated by types of expenditures and types of counsel. And that was the same for appointments, just same kind of breakdown. For next year, we are going to be asking that counties report their information into different categories. And you can see that on your PDF on the next page we have coming up, the different categories we're asking that counties report in. This will give us a really good picture of how the money is being spent. You know, now we know dollar amounts, which is huge because we didn't know that before, but now we're going to learn how it's being spent. And I think that's going to be a big wealth of information. The counties are aware of this. They do know. We're hoping to do some education for the counties later this year to troubleshoot some potential issues. And so we're looking forward to that. And that's all I have.
That's great. Any questions? Okay, thanks, Crystal. Next, grants and reporting. Judge Maderi.
Sure. So if you all go, I think it's on page is it 21 that we've done. So, you know, if you've read that, then you're kind of up to speed on what grants and reporting did. And, you know, the bottom line is that we received these ARPA funds of 13.9 million. And then we received requests for grants. And so we started going through them. And then we all of a sudden kind of came to the realization is we've got, you know, 254 counties. We've got only so much pie, right? And that if we were going to approve the $5 or so million, then that was going to eat quite a lot of that pie for only a few counties. And so the committee started talking about whether or not what we wanted to do, and we all kind of voted to just bring it to you all to the full board to discuss. And if you go to summary of key points for discussion, what we wanted to chat with you all about and talk to you all about is what kind of funding ARPA should be used for, and should it be used for training, administrative, mitigation specialists, those type of things. And then we kind of, you know, didn't want to come to you all with a recommendation without kind of getting the whole board's input on where you all think we should do. So, you know, as I said, you know, we have 254 counties. We have, you know, we need 75 million, right? Probably to get everything done. We're not getting that. We've got 13.9. And so we wanted to talk to the full board and say, you know, we didn't want to make any actions without you all, because we didn't want to give, you know, a huge slice of a pie to someone when another county really needed it. And so we really wanted to come and talk to you all about that. And with that, I guess, Edwin, I'll turn it over to you so you can kind of chat a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you, Judge Maderi. So yeah, the main upshot of the discussion, I think, was because we issued the special RFA regarding the ARPA funds and also some of the dedicated funds for mental health defender programs in January. Several counties, a small handful, responded very quickly and submitted applications. Many counties reached out to us and told us that they were exploring an application, but hadn't had time to submit one by this meeting. So I think that the upshot of the discussion at the committee meeting was that it would be prudent to wait until you all meet again in June, when all the counties will have had sufficient opportunity, all the counties who want to put in an application for ARPA funding will have had sufficient opportunity to get their ducks in a row, figure out what they'd like to ask for, and then submit something to us. So I think the current suggestion is to hold off on ARPA awards until the June meeting.
And then, you know, I'd like to also, if I may, Judge Keller, I'd like to also thank the staff. I mean, they went above and beyond, as they always do, and worked up everything for us. And then we kind of came in and shut everything down. So, you know, we apologize to the staff because you guys did great. But I think it's a better thing, because then we give the opportunity for everybody to seek a piece of that pie. And then I have to tell you, the staff is really going to have their work cut out for them, because, you know, and TIDC, because we're going to have to decide, where these $13.9 million are going to go to. And, that's going to be a very difficult decision for all of us, to say, El Paso's request is greater than Hidalgo's request, or, each of those. So I think the staff is going to have a really hard time going through and culling out the requests that we're going to have. But I agree. And I just want to thank the staff.
I agree. They did a lot of work, and I want to thank you too as well, Chief Justice Raddick and Judge Maderi, for looking at the big picture and realizing we need to back off and make overall decisions about what we want to spend this money on and make sure enough counties had applied. So thank you.
And just to remind everyone, the RFA, the special RFA that we issued for this special appropriation of the federal funds, we basically invited counties to tell us what sort of additional indigent defense capacity they could build with the funding that would help them to tackle the backlog that has accrued over the pandemic years now. So the guidance that we received from the legislature when we got this appropriation was quite high level, but we've invited counties to tell us, what sort of capacity they would like to add that would be most helpful to them. We did have some discussions at the committee meeting about different types of positions and programs, and I'm not sure if you all want to expand on that or just wait till we see what comes in and compare it with each other.
I think if I can weigh in, I think we should talk to everybody in regards to that paragraph, in regards to training, travel, administrative or mitigation specialist positions, because I think we need to get some marching orders from TIDC itself, so that when we get into our next grants and reporting meeting before the full meeting in June, I think we need to have some guidance to see what they're thinking so that we can give them a good report at the June meeting. That's my 2 cents.
Sounds fine.
Well, okay, then Edwin, you want to just kind of, talk about our issues that we were having and go over each one of these little things. And I mean, I think we just got to open it up for discussion. And if somebody doesn't understand what we're asking, then, I mean, ask questions, because, we need to have some guidance from you all on what you're looking for on these ARPA fund spending. And if you want us to consider it for mitigation specialists, we weren't really thinking of that at the time. Is it for administrative? The ARPA funding has come down, I think, with the mandate of, it's kind of broad and kind of not broad, right? It's pandemic related backlog. Well, I mean, what is pandemic related backlog? Do I need more, administrative assistance to be able to clear those, to bring them to the attorneys? Or do we need to do mitigation specialists? Is it only for attorneys? We're just kind of looking for guidance. So maybe Edwin, you can kind of go through those and talk about that. Sure.
If you could go back to the page with the committee summary, please, just to have it on the screen. So the several requests that we got initially varied in terms of what they were proposing or asking for. And as I said, when we issued the request for applications, we invited the counties to tell us what would be most helpful to them in terms of indigent defense capacity. So for example, we had one small grant from Fort Bend County. Turns out that Fort Bend County did receive the Fort Bend County Public Defender did receive some assistance for augmenting their attorney staff, but they still had a need for additional administrative support in their office to keep up with the increased workload associated with tackling the backlog. So they were asking for an administrative support position. And in another example, we received a request from El Paso County, basically to add some attorneys and support staff to their public defender office to help them deal with their increased workload that has accumulated, and in particular, to help them deal with the mountain of trials that they're facing. There's a case backlog, but in particular, there's a lot, because trials just weren't happening during the pandemic. They have a lot of those on their plate. Part of the request from El Paso County in addition to attorneys, included mitigation specialists that were not solely dedicated to capital cases, which is where we usually see that type of position. And in talking with the county about their request, we did, the way that the division of labor is structured within a big public defender office like the El Paso PD is a little bit different compared to other public defender offices. We, at the staff level, thought that the function that was being proposed by the staff that they were asking for was certainly within the scope of what indigent defense obligations they have. So, but it was a type of position that just because of the way they divide up their workload within their office, we hadn't seen that type of, I guess, job title in that context before. So that's another example of some of the kinds of variation that we've seen so far. We also, just to put on your radar, we've been contacted by a number of counties that are interested in adding or building perhaps a rural regional public defender office because they just don't have enough attorneys in their area to help address this backlog. We've been telling those counties that, to the extent that they have a backlog and that building such a program would add capacity that could help them tackle it, that would be an eligible program. Many of these counties also see that as a way to, get some resources in place to help them with more long-standing problems related to attorney attrition. The fewer and fewer attorneys are available on their wheels to keep up with cases in normal times. So that's just kind of a little sampling of the spectrum of requests that we've been seeing regarding these funds and the types of capacity that folks are asking to add. Does vary depending on their particular circumstances.
Is it possible that it might be difficult for some of these counties to really identify the total impact that the pandemic had on them? I mean, I think that's so complicated when I try to think about it. I'm thinking of the CPS cases that we've been trying, a lot of them, because you couldn't do it for a year or two or whatever it was in the long run. And I'm concerned that the counties that aren't giving you a grant request or a proposal or whatever just don't really know how to measure it. And maybe we should look at divvying up the money amongst all the counties like we do with our formula grant.
We've looked into doing something like that. The issue that we found and Judge, I think you're right. I mean, a lot of these counties don't totally know what their backlog looks like. We do have good OCA data looking at active pending cases on a county by county basis. So we can look at that. But to your point, that doesn't totally describe what the need is in the county, right? Because some of those counties may have enough attorneys to deal with all that. Some may not. Others, the holdup may not be indigent defense. It may be they don't have enough judges or prosecutors, whatever it may be.
Right.
The additional issue, we did talk, months and months back about the possibility of a formula grant type approach. The issue is when we look at OCA data, only about half the counties really do have some sort of backlog. There are a lot of counties actually where the active pending case loads have gone down surprisingly during the pandemic. So it's, we did talk about that as a possibility. But Edwin, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I would just add, Judge Torres, that the approach that we've taken is we want to help counties to help tackle the backlog. We need to find a way to add capacity on the indigent defense side. Obviously, the funds that are being appropriated to us are specifically for the indigent defense piece of a backlog that also involves the judiciary and the prosecution as well. And so by just providing them with resources, like, for example, I mentioned a number of counties have a big problem with attrition and they don't have enough wheel attorneys any longer to keep up with the workload or to surge the workload to tackle the backlog. So we've encouraged counties to make requests that actually add capacity, and by just kind of dividing up the funds, that by itself doesn't do that. So that was part of our approach when we constructed the RFA. But we have been very open about we want you to tell us how to best add that capacity and build it.
So I just sent Jeff a message. I don't know if you can get that up, but the other thing that we might want to look at also is these heat maps, is what they call them, from OCA. And it will show, and maybe we'd attempt to divvy that way, right? I don't know how to do that, because if you look, there are counties that, can you show a heat map, Jeff, so that they know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Megan or Doriana, do you all have those handy that you might be able to share that, or do you need to send it over?
I need the link.
Okay, I'll send that right over.
Okay, sorry. So basically what these heat maps are, they're actually very cool. It's a picture of the state of Texas with every one of the 254 counties. And then you can hover your cursor over something and it'll show you this county, from March of 2020, these were the numbers in the county. And then I think we have them, is it through November, Jeff? I can't remember the cutoff date. We're a little behind still.
Yeah, it's behind. I think it's sometime in the fall.
Yeah. So then we have the amount of cases then, and then it's just a mathematical thing, right? Where they say whatever county, they pick a county and they say, El Paso County has gone up this amount. Nueces County has gone up this amount. So there you go. You can see, go to the red ones. So if you pick a red one, there you go. Who's that? Clayburgh?
Nueces.
Oh, Nueces. Okay. Yeah. So that's 100. No, that can't be Nueces. Yeah, it is 124. Go to Clayburgh underneath it. All right. Oh, these are misdemeanor, right? Now let's talk about the felonies. Let's go to the felony heat map if we can. Yeah. So if you look, see at Clayburgh County, so there's 179.5% of a change in cases. I mean, that's a massive amount. That then go to like one of the little gray areas, right? I'm just, it's like you want to just send them all flowers for getting through this pandemic the way that they did, right? 16% change, 17% change, 21%. And so I think that if my suggestion is to also kind of take into consideration the need of this heat map the way it is. Because, for a county to go from, 5 to 10 cases, that might be one thing, but a county to go from, 15,000 cases to 38,000 cases. So maybe we need to look at the heat map when we're discovering these things and put that into the formula that the grants and I don't mean formula like formula grant, but put it in the mixer so that we all consider that as well. So that when we get those grant requests, we say, TIDC staff, as part of the presentation, can you tell me on the heat map, where we are, what the percentage of increase is?
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
We would certainly, I think our plan at this point would be to, when we present these to you in June, would be to indicate the prioritization in part with the context of this data, updated versions of this data, so that can be part of the deliberations to the extent that we have more requests than we have available funding.
And then also, Edwin, I'm sorry, do we also, I'm talking to everybody here, do we also want to concentrate on the felony side instead of the misdemeanor side? Because I know we just showed Nueces County, right? Our Nueces County, our misdemeanor courts that just nothing is happening down there, right? But every single person is at least out on bond, versus on the felony convictions. I mean, the felony cases, I mean, we've got people that have been in jail for, 2.5, 3 years. And so do we want to concentrate more on heat map felony or heat map misdemeanor?
I think it makes sense to do felony.
Yeah, I would agree.
They tend to linger in jail, so.
And we could certainly provide that context and use that to help us prioritize recommendations and give that to you all to take into consideration. I'll just mention one complicating factor to keep in mind. It's that this data is based on pending filed cases, both at the felony and misdemeanor level. And in some jurisdictions, the primary bottleneck is really a defense bottleneck. There's not enough defense lawyers to keep up with and help to reduce work all those cases through. In other cases, there are sufficient defense resources in place, and it's really a a judicial bottleneck. They need visiting judges, for example. And even in some cases, it's a prosecutorial bottleneck where maybe we're not seeing all the filed cases that, are going to be filed. So that makes it it makes it more complicated in terms of trying to take into account the county's circumstances. Our general approach would be to bring the request to you in June with this contextual information regarding the pending case backlog, and also any other factors related to those, defense capacity that help to put that in context. Because it's, just as you see many different colors on these heat maps, there are many different scenarios in place that the counties are grappling with, and their needs are different. So we've been trying to be responsive to the uniqueness of each county's needs.
Edwin, do you have any idea how many requests we're going to have by a month before June?
We've probably been having substantive conversations with 10, I would say about 10 to 20 counties if we talk about regional ideas, maybe even 25. It's definitely not 254. As you see, there's a wide variety of ways that the backlog is, affecting counties. So it's really hard to say, but in terms of conversations that we've been having, we have done training and outreach to all the 254 counties about this opportunity. And after this meeting, my intention is to do another round of outreach and notification to make sure that everybody's aware of what's available and to encourage them to contact us for help to put together an application and talk them through the kinds of things that are eligible. But it's at this point, it's hard to say. I don't anticipate, 50. I think maybe 20.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think maybe when you're reaching out to them also, though, what you don't want with the new reach out is that all 254 go, all right, let's come on in. And so, when you're reaching out, I don't know if you say it, but I think you say, and I must be hungry because I'm talking about pies again, but I think you tell them that, you only have a limited amount of money. And so, that TIDC is going to be very discerning in regards to the divvying up of that, so that they don't think, yippee-ki-yay, I can get this money,
Right. Well, I think it's safe. Sorry, Joe.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to say, so in addition to, as Edwin said, we have done just kind of general outreach to all 254 counties. Some of those, again, just don't have a backlog. Some have a backlog, but the bottleneck, as Edwin said, isn't indigent defense. But we can certainly do a broad outreach again. But given what you're saying, do you think, would it be helpful for us looking at this felony heat map to maybe do, and we've already done some of this, but to do more targeted outreach to the reds and yellows and and again, they may come back and say, we're okay. Yeah, the active pending caseload is high, but we have enough defense attorneys, we're okay. But do you want us to do some kind of targeted outreach going forward? Would that be helpful?
Are you asking, Jeff, whether or not to reach out to the hotspots in particular?
That's right.
Yeah. Good idea.
Okay.
It's a tough one on these hotspots, because let me see how I can say this. There are some courts that completely shut down, right? And other courts worked their tails off. And so it's a difficult position that TIDC is in, because we've got to consider that as well, right? So let's say I shut my court down and didn't do anything for 2.5 years. And then my hotspot's now, whatever, 150% more. Do I get rewarded for shutting down my court? And so I don't know. And I don't know how you're going to be able to discover that. And so, I will give it to the judges around the state of Texas. Most of the judges have worked tirelessly through this pandemic. There's not a day that I'm not in court. There's not a day. I just finished a hearing this morning. That's why I'm late. And so, I would say, that the judges have done a good job. The other thing that we do need to consider is in regards to, whether or not they need TIDC help with lawyers, is that there's a massive court reporter shortage, right? So as a presiding judge, we've got some budgeted money in order to bring in visiting judges, but I don't have a court reporter to put the visiting judge with. And so that's another issue that, I mean, it's a big, huge, mix that we're going to have to look at and consider a million different factors, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to your point, you can also look at the OCA data on dispositions during the pandemic in order to determine how productive the court was.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
more
but then you also have to look at it to see, I'm sorry, Judge Keller, but you also have to look at it to see, there's, what if there's a jurisdiction that had mass exodus from the DA's office and they didn't have cases ready for court, right? So is that the judge's fault? Not really. Or what if all of a sudden, they don't, as we know, right, TIDC, they don't have enough criminal defense attorneys to get the cases done. And the criminal defense attorneys that are on the wheel are so incredibly overworked that I can't, now that we're completely opening up, right, for trials, I can't put, a criminal defense attorney back to back every week on a different homicide. I mean, it's unsustainable. And so you got to look at that information as well.
Is there any way, OCA set up the Zoom for all the judges. Is there any way to figure out how many times it was utilized by what court? Because I can see where there'd be, thinking back, where there wouldn't be a lot of criminal dispositions, especially felonies during the pandemic, because the defendant had to consent to the trial being via Zoom. And a lot of judges were not comfortable doing Zoom trials, especially in felony cases. So if we could determine usage, maybe it would be, because I'm sure they still had dockets. I know my county did, and I know Bear County used Zoom a lot, but just to figure out, okay, so what was the usage by the courts of the Zoom? I don't know if that's a possibility to get into that.
I don't know if that's available. We could certainly look into it and ask our IT folks at OCA.
Kind of measure productivity. Yeah.
I think that the OCA data on dispositions and, the month-by-month court activity reports are probably the best source of data on that type of court activity. We could, if you'd like, in terms of us presenting these in June and helping to give you tools to prioritize, we could run summaries of court activity reports in the affected jurisdictions and kind of make them part of the package for you to review, which I think, to the extent that you think that's going to be important to prioritize.
Well, so Edwin, what is that going to show us? How people were working or, off at the beach?
Right, which is what Judge Maderi was saying, that you don't want to reward the individuals who just shut down their court and said, and now they're way behind and we're going to bail them out. I don't know.
Well, we wouldn't be giving the resources to the courts. We would be building defense capacity in some way or other, either adding or creating a program with attorneys and support staff or something like that. But I can see how you all may decide.
Yeah, I think you've got to just be very careful. I kind of opened up Pandora's box right there, because I think we have to be very careful, because if you look at the stats and then all of a sudden, you go, wow, that they didn't do very much. And then all of a sudden you find out, that there was a mass exodus at the DA's office or something, right? Then that's not fair. Or if, there's no court reporters, or, whatever it is. I think we start with the heat maps, and then maybe we can find out, productivity. I know OCA can give us how many, because they always celebrate whatever our millionth Zoom meeting or our, they always celebrate and send that kind of stuff out. But I think we've got to be very careful on that as well.
I really hate to see us. I think we should assume that everybody is doing their best in deciding how this money's going to go.
Yeah, I agree with you, Judge Raddick, because I think that in every group there's a few, right? But the whole should not be punished. And I think the judges, as I said before, they've really been trying to do everything they can to keep the criminal justice system running. So I would agree with you, Judge Raddick.
I wanted to suggest one more thing. When you reach out to the counties again, Edwin, was there a deadline for filing in the RFA?
Yes, well, so we've been communicating May 2nd as the hard deadline for consideration at the June meeting.
Okay, I just
And,
wanted to make sure
yeah,
you
what-
did something like that. Thanks.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question. We want to make sure that we have enough time internally to do the vetting. This is more complicated in terms of us kind of helping to give you data to prioritize, but yes, we've got that May 2nd deadline in place, and I will communicate that again. And just to, I guess, final point on some of these issues, our operative assumption in terms of what kinds of things are eligible is that any type of position that would be eligible in our normal grant program in terms of improving indigent defense, we would be open to seeing in these types of proposals. To the extent that, as I said before, we've been asking the counties to tell us what configuration of resources is best for their programs or needs. So unless you all provide guidance to the contrary, we would continue to operate like that, and then of course present it all to you with the transparency to see what that is.
I think there might be a silver lining in that you were saying that there's an interest in developing a rural public defender office. So I think those probably should be given some kind of maybe priority or whatever.
A number of the counties that have been reaching out to us are in that situation where they've been thinking about doing something along the lines of a rural regional PD, largely because they have fewer and fewer attorneys in their local areas, and they're having harder and harder time. And they see this as an opportunity to not only help them address the backlog, but potentially to, once something is put in place, help them meet their ongoing needs given the attrition. So I anticipate that we would see some requests along those lines.
I think that like these TAP conferences where TIDC comes in, and as well as counties who have recently gotten Regional Public Defender's Office, really shows the other judges the value of a PDO, and I think that you guys are doing a great job generating that interest when you come to these conferences. And I see a lot of people that are really, I mean, they're calling Medina County, they're calling Chris, and Chris is sending them your way.
Now, Scott Ehlers was just presenting to TAC yesterday and got some great feedback along those lines. So it's an important part of our outreach.
It is.
Are there any other discussion points that the committee members wanted to touch on before we jump back into it?
I just want to say thank you for all, and I know everyone's busy, but taking time to engage in this conversation really gives us a lot more guidance and a lot of help. So we appreciate it, and we'll bring you everything we've talked about, an updated heat map. We'll do targeted outreach and bring you recommendations for the June board meeting. But thank you for engaging in it.
Do we want to go on now, Edwin, to the mental health grants?
I think, Judge, we should probably back up to the agenda item 8A, which is just a recap of the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. As you'll recall from our last meeting, excuse me, we had some delays in finalizing the county's, our review of the county's submitted expenditure reports from last year. So I just wanted to give you the final numbers and show you how they shook out. So for last year, the counties reported total indigent defense spending of just under 275 million. And I put a chart here or a table here so that you could see that in the context of the recent years. It did go up from the pandemic dip. So you'll recall that in 2020, spending dropped by $31 million, which was a huge change. It did go up 6.2 million this year compared to 2020. So that's just about 2.3% increase. So we are seeing, I think, that trajectory moving back toward normal, but still county spending on indigent defense last year was substantially lower than where it had been, which had peaked at about 300 million in 2019. So I just wanted to put a bow on that data after we finished our review and share that with you. If there are no questions about that, I think we can go on to the item 8B, which is, I'm sorry, 8C, which is budget status reports. So this sheet shows you the revenue that flows into the Fair Defense account, and it puts it in the context of the most recent 3 years. One of the things that we saw with the pandemic was the inflows into the Fair Defense account during FY 2021 dropped substantially. If you look at the box in the middle of the page that shows summaries from September through February period in the most recent 3 years, and it shows you the collections from the into the Fair Defense account in these various sources, you'll see that in 2021, we really took a hit of about $3.5 million or so. I'm sorry, about $3 million in collections. That is starting to recover. And so the court cost collections are up year over year from 2021 by a couple $1 million. So we're seeing that recovery trend of collections that go into the Fair Defense account recovering, but we're still not all the way back to where we were pre-pandemic, which was the FY20 figures really reflect pre-pandemic because they go through February, and we didn't really start seeing any impacts until March. So generally speaking, the trend lines are good in terms of court collections. We are recovering. We do continue to have an unappropriated fund balance in the Fair Defense account. When I asked Sharon the status of that, she shared that it's just about $18 million that's available in the Fair Defense account that is not appropriated for our use. So we have discussed in previous meetings that the legislature used to provide estimated appropriation authority, but several years ago shifted to only appropriating a specific sum and leaving some of those Fair Defense account funds in reserve. So there's about 18 million cushion in there. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is on the bottom left of this sheet, you see a summary of the juror pay collections in recent years. And typically we see, this is a specific court cost collected upon convictions for the juror pay, the jury service fund. And TIDC is appropriated, this is a little bit complicated, but that fund, which is based on a court cost, any amounts that are above $10 million at the end of the fiscal year are transferred to TIDC. So typically that's around $6 million for TIDC. The most recent year, it plummeted to just $385,000. So that was directly related to the pandemic and the decline in the collection of all kinds of court costs. We've been working with our colleagues at OCA to be able to track this unusual piece of our funding more closely. We do know that year to date, the collections into that fund, it's right around $4.5 million. So, and we're about halfway through the fiscal year. So we may see yet again a year where we have a big decline in this piece of our revenue. But we are trying to monitor it more closely, and we'll continue to report out. The main point I want to share, though, is that because we do have that unappropriated fund balance in the Fair Defense account, it's able to absorb that decline in our revenues without any impact on our operating budget for now. It does make that cushion smaller moving forward, but we don't have any immediate impacts in terms of our operating budget. Any questions about that? If you can go to the next page, we just have, so we have a number of grants that have been appropriate or been awarded out of previous fiscal years. And this is just a quick summary to show you the status of our previous budget years and our pending obligations. We have been working hard to make sure that we are using up the sort of maximizing our appropriation in each fiscal year. So a number of grants that are being paid out over 2022 are actually funded from, because the awards were made during 2021, are being funded out of those previous fiscal years. And so we still have a lot of pending financial activity related to those obligations for FY 21 and 20. Next page is just our budget status sheet. We have yet to make a lot of our grant payments. We're on the cusp of issuing about half of the formula grant funding within the next couple of weeks, as well as the first batch of improvement grant payments, but those have not yet been out the door, or not yet out the door. We do have made payments so far this fiscal year in terms of the Operation Lone Star funding, because those operations are up and running and have been for a number of months. So if there are no questions about that, we do have one very minor budget amendment. We currently have budgeted $15,000 a year for interns that we coordinate with through University of Texas School of Law. Wesley is going to lay out this small budget adjustment.
Thanks, Edwin. Good morning, members. As Edwin said, we've had a long-standing relationship. Really, since 2006, we've paid UT to retain students on our behalf that work with us for the summer as law clerks, typically a half or a full summer, and that amount has been $15,000. Due to some changes at the law school, we're restructuring that agreement to a fellowship model, and the amount needs to increase just slightly to accommodate up to 3 full-time clerks for the summer at $6,000, basically a stipend, a fellowship stipend for them to work with us in the summer. And that's the budget request at this time, would be to increase the amount in the line item for UT contracts to $18,000 from $15,000. And we have a motion to that effect if there are no questions.
All right, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this or Judge Maderi, but I'll just jump in. Is there a motion to increase the UT contracts interns line item from $15,000 to $18,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries.
So if you could turn to page 19 in your meeting materials, Doriana has an update on the formula grant special conditions.
Thank you, Edwin. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to give a quick update on our formula grant program. As a quick reminder, when formula grants are awarded, we place special conditions on the awards to counties that are not in compliance with plan reporting and grant requirements. As of this morning, all counties have submitted their IDERs. 25 counties have outstanding Commissioners Courts resolutions, but I believe that number is closer to 15 now. 50 counties have not fully completed the Indigent Defense Plan approval process, and I believe the policy team will cover that later on. And 14 counties are not in compliance with court activity reporting requirements to the OCA and Judicial Council, but staff has been in contact with all of our outstanding counties. Edwin?
Thank you, Doriana. So yeah, these numbers are actually pretty good considering our historical patterns, and we are continuing to do a lot of outreach. We never just hold funding without contacting the counties and helping them dot their I's and cross their T's to get the payments flowing. So I think we're in pretty good shape and making progress every day. We've already talked about the summary of the Grants and Reporting Committee meeting, but I just want to touch on two things. The committee did recommend 2 grants to the full board today. One was a single year improvement grant, $16,170 for the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office. That's related to the technology project that we discussed earlier, helping the program streamline the appointments process and other kinds of kind of repetitive tasks to make them much more efficient. And then the committee also recommended an FY22-23 mental health defender grant. This is money that was specifically appropriated to TIDC for mental defender programs focused on mentally ill defendants. And that grant was for $123,685. So we'll have quick summaries of those in a moment, but we didn't touch on that in the committee report. On the next page, which is page number 21.
Edwin, I'm sorry. Can you also make sure that you talk to them or tell everybody it's a different pie? So this is not the 13.9 pie. This is the 5 million. Well, and change, right?
That's right. So we the committee did not recommend any action yet on the ARPA funding, but there were some other grants that were not related to the ARPA funding that the committee was comfortable moving forward and recommending to the full board, and we'll lay those out for you in just a second. On this page, I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the special pots of special money that was appropriated by the legislature for restricted purposes, and kind of the status of those. So of course, the first one is related to the pandemic related backlogs. This is what we've been referring to as the ARPA money. And the legislature appropriated 13.9 million for that. None of it's been granted out yet. So that all remains available. And that's the funding that we have been discussing at length. When we get to our June meeting, we anticipate having a lot of requests that we'll be recommending for you out of that appropriation. There's just a quick summary of the requests that were in the door by the time we had our meeting, and you can see they totaled 5.5 million, which gave the committee some pause in terms of making sure that everybody had an opportunity to apply. The next restricted appropriation was for mental health defender programs. The legislature appropriated 5 million for the biennium for that purpose. In the course of our regular grant making, we've already obligated about 1.3 million of that. So we have 3.7 million available of that mental health money. And one of the two grants that's recommended today is would come out of that restricted appropriation for mental health defender programs. That is the Wichita request that you see there for 123,000. And then lastly was the special appropriation that we received through HB 9 for Operation Lone Star activity. That appropriation was $29.7 million. We've been very careful to obligate only what we think is necessary and to award out only what we think is necessary for the operations to meet current needs. And so currently, the outstanding obligations or the awards that the board has already approved total about 9.9 million, but we still have 19.8 million that we have on standby for that purpose. And we have a grant modification that we'll talk about later that would use some of that 19.8 million to help continue to meet OLS needs. Okay, so next up, we have that first grant that was recommended by the committee. Doriana, do you want to lay that out?
Thank you, Edwin. As Edwin mentioned, that this is a single year request out of Culberson County, and it is for an automation project for the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender. Again, the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender covers Culberson County, Hudspeth, Brewster, Jeff Davis, and Presidio County. And this is a single year request for $16,170, and that includes equipment and contract services. Edwin?
Thanks, Doriana. So we have a committee motion for this one, and it will definitely enhance the efficiency of the program. I'm not sure who makes, I guess, Judge Maderi, you should make the committee motion, I think.
Okay, I've got the yard man in my background and my dogs are going crazy. So there's a lull. So at this time, can you put the cursor on it? Is it the committee motion? Thank you. There's a committee motion to award Culberson County FY22 single year improvement grant of $16,170 for the automation project and case management system upgrade.
It's a committee motion, so it doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next up is the mental health defender request from Wichita. Doriana?
Thank you, Edwin. This is a request out of Wichita, and they submitted this request under our specially earmarked funds for mental health defender programs. This is a request for this is a 2-year request for administrative support staff to help out with the mental health case management manager program. And it is a 2-year request for a grand total of $123,686. And if there are any questions, I'll pass on to Edwin.
Judge Maderi
Edwin,
has got too much noise going on, so I'm going to present the motion if that's okay. There's a committee motion to award Wichita County and FY22, FY23 mental health defender improvement grant of $123,686 to support additional support staff for the mental health defender program of Wichita County Public Defender. It's a committee motion. It doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Edwin, you're on mute.
Apologize. Thank you. Lastly, for the grant section today, if you look on your materials on page 24, we have a grant modification request for the award that was made to the Lubbock County Private Defender Office for Operation Lone Star. Just to recap where we are with this, TIDC was appropriated $29.7 million for OLS Indigent Defense. And so far, you all have awarded out $9.9 million of that, leaving about $19.9 million available. In September, the board approved a grant of $9.6 million for indigent defense appointments for OLS, and that provided for direct client service representation so that the affected counties would not see huge spikes in their indigent defense costs. And basically, the intent was for this to cover all indigent defense costs related to OLS in the affected counties. LPDO has contracted with several public defense operations, but they do have a need for additional funds to meet the projected needs, and we've been working closely with them and support this request. The original term of the grant also was for 1 year. Initially, all the budgeting and everything was done with a 1-year time horizon in mind. Because the number of cases was not quite as high as was anticipated initially, we think that the existing resources will last us through the end of the biennium. So the first part of our recommendation and part of their request is to extend the term of this grant through the end of the biennium, which would be August 31st, 2023. And then secondly, they're requesting an additional $3,208,389 in order to contract for additional capacity to get them through the next period and make sure that there are sufficient attorneys available to handle those cases. So the staff recommendation is to approve the LPDO's grant request for that grant, which is number OLS 22004. And we do have a motion.
Okay, there was not a committee motion on this. So is there a motion to increase the improvement grant to the Lubbock Private Defender Office amount by $3,208,389 and extend the term through August 31st, 2023 to support continuation of Operation Lone Star Indigent Defense Services?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I believe that concludes our grant section of the agenda.
Thank you, Judge Maderi, and thank you, Edwin. Let's go on to the fiscal monitoring report.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's see, I just lost my screen. All right. So included in the meeting notebook, beginning on page 26, you should find an outline of the fiscal monitoring activities for the since the beginning of our fiscal year. But I just wanted to summarize the activity since our December board meeting. I have issued 2 initial reports. Those are to Medina and Bastrop counties. The responses are due later this month. I issued an initial/final report to Tom Green County, as I had no fiscal findings, so it's really just a final report. And I wanted to just commend Tom Green County for not having any findings there. There are 3 counties with initial fiscal reports pending issue. Those are Kenny, Taylor, and Karnes County. The reports are in the vetting process and should be issued soon. The reviews on Cameron and Hidalgo counties are ongoing at this time. So in addition to these individual county reviews, I assisted with the desk reviews of the IDERs, and we just, the certification process was completed just a few weeks ago. So upon completing the IDR review, I got worked on the risk assessment to determine the list of counties to monitor next. And that process was finalized just this week. And because this is a once a year process, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the risk assessment process. So like I said, once the IDR desk reviews are completed, I actually get a report, a customized report from PPRI, which is based on all this information. This report also has some weighted points assigned for various metrics that we look at, Examples of these metrics are maybe the amount of spending a county has, the amount of a grant award if they received one, do they have a PD office and the amount of money being spent there, or even if the staff checked a box during the desk review. So we've got several things going on, and those are just examples of that. Anyway, after all that, counties with the higher points are selected for a possible review, and then we do some evaluations based on population and location to determine, whittle down which counties we're actually going to go to. And then consideration is also made with the policy team, because if they're going to go out to a county that I know is on my list, I'm going to go out and go with them on that review. So if there's anyone that has would like some information regarding this risk assessment matrix, I'll be happy to share that with you. But basically, that's all my report.
Deborah, do I remember correctly that Tom Green, this is only the third county that you've ever come across that had no findings? Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
It's a big deal.
And yeah, and I don't really count the first one, but Tom Green I was really excited about. So yeah. So yeah, the first county that I went to that I regularly didn't have any findings, I actually had to go to the county because they weren't reporting. It was when we first had that new detailed attorney reporting, and they just refused to do that part of it. So I actually had to go out to that county, but once we got all that taken care of, and then I did a further review, there were no other findings. So I kind of don't count that. So yeah, it is a very big deal that I don't find any findings. And it's not that I'm out like really trying to dog everybody. I just trying to make sure we've got it going in the direction we want it to go. So.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks very much. It's time for policies and standards. Alex?
All right. So item A, report on the 2021 Indigent Defense Plan submission and review process, and Wesley's going to help.
Thanks, Alex. Once again, good morning. This is just an update on where we're at. We really launched the review process of the Indigent Defense Plans this last month upon completion of the expenditure review, Indigent Defense expenditure review that we completed over the winter. So I want to compliment staff. We've made some significant progress. At the time that this document was prepared, we had still 50 counties that hadn't yet even completed the approval process. As of now, that's down to 40 counties, and we're once again contacting these counties and reviewing the plans. The main part of the review process this cycle is changes to the plans that have been made, as well as updated contracts for the 30 or so counties that use contract defender programs. And then we also have a large number of counties that have created new public defender offices in the last 2 years due to grants from this board. And so those counties also have to incorporate the appointment of those public defender offices, and as well as posting the public defender plans of operation under statute. So we'll be looking at those as well. But that completes my report, but we anticipate we will get all of these plans in and complete our review process over the course of the spring.
Okay, item B is policy monitoring report. Joel?
Thank you, Mr. Bunnan. Continuing on to page 31, I have a summary of recent policy monitoring activity. Since the December board meeting, we've issued 5 reports. 2 of those reviews we've completed. That's Collin and Fort Bend counties. I would like to congratulate those 2 counties for their hard work and making improvements in their system. We have 3 other reviews that require follow-ups. This is very typical for our first policy review, and most counties will require at least 2 reviews to close out a report. Those 3 other counties are Bastrop, Parker, and Tom Green counties. We have several other reviews in which we're very close to issuing reports, but we have not yet done so. One of those counties is Kinney County. This review came at the request of Chair Collier, and she requested that we review the procedures for appointing counsel in misdemeanor cases. I've attached this letter after this summary. As to ongoing reviews, since COVID came about, we have stopped doing drop-in reviews, and these reviews were reviews in which we would go to small counties, examine about 20 or 25 misdemeanor files, and then talk to the county judge or other officials to see how their system is working and how we can make improvements. This last week, we've started making these reviews again, and we went to 3 counties in the Wichita Falls area, Wilbarger, Archer, and Clay counties. And so we will start these reviews back up and hopefully hit a lot of counties that don't normally hear from us. As to other ongoing reviews, we have Chambers and Jefferson counties, which we will do in April, and Galveston County at the end of March. And if there's no other questions, that completes my report. Thank you.
Okay, last is complaints. Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Good morning, members. My name is Nicholas Sawyer. I'm going to be providing the quarterly complaints update. So it's 2 updates I want to provide include a recent summary of complaints since the last meeting, as well as some process updates since the last meeting. So between November 1st of last year and February 23rd of this year, TADC received 22 new complaints, which is about the same number thereabouts as recent quarters. Some common issues that complainants allege are that 1, their court-appointed defense attorneys are not timely communicating with their clients as required under state statutes, or that attorneys aren't abiding their clients' decisions, such as whether to take a plea or to go to trial as required under ethics rules. 2 notable complaints that we've received during this time. First was related to an attorney that was appointed to the direct appeal of a death penalty case, and the attorney was not on a public appointment list for those eligible to be taking those cases. So TADC notified the appropriate decision makers and action was taken to remedy the situation. Second, another notable complaint, TADC received information that defendants with mental health issues weren't being provided mental health evaluations. TADC notified the appropriate decision makers, and again, remedial action was taken. Our update of the process since the last report. Now Kristen Meeks is going to be the new complaint specialist, so the person responsible for managing the whole complaints process and flow, responding to complaints and such, making these reports. So during the next meeting, you'll find her making the complaints reports. The only other update related to the complaints process is that the new streamlined process that we implemented more recently has been continuing to keep administrative costs low. That completes my quarterly complaints report. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Just wanted to say thank you for working on this. It is so much better than it used to be, and it's so much streamlined and so much more effective. Y'all have done a great job, so thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
That's all for policy and standards.
Okay, well, my agenda stops right there, but Jeff, is there anything else?
I don't think so, Judge, and unless we're missing anything. The next board meeting is going to be, Megan, I believe June 9th is what we have. Is that correct? And that'll be in person.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you, Alex. I forgot to say thank you for all your work. Next board meeting will be in person. And are there any questions or any further discussion about anything? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you for coming. Bye.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
Bye.